You're doing good already. Because you know it's intolerance you, but this full after lunch.
I'm surprised. I'm excited about it. Bidding is hard. Doing estimates? Talk about like one of the most essential things you have to train, that is one of the hardest things to train. You just have to. Getting rolling here. Thank you all. Can you hear me all the way in the back just fine? Excellent. We got a couple minutes. If you have any burning questions that you're hoping to get answered, throw them out right now and I will tell you yes, we'll answer it, or maybe we'll just do it right now. So any burning questions here? No? Sweet. If you come up with a question while I'm talking, just raise your hand. I would rather interrupt what I'm talking specific about it, because if you have the question, someone else does. A lot of times I'll think I've said something and just completely skip over a major point, but someone will stop me and they'll give it a chance to address it. So do not be afraid to shout out a question. How's the show been for everyone?
Great.
How's the education sessions been? Getting your CEUs. How many ISA folks we got here? Got certified arborists, nice. CTSPs? A few, sweet. How many of you are the person on your crew who does basically all the bidding? Oh, not so many, okay. How many of you have a team or have someone who does this for you? A few, okay. The rest of you just curious? Just curious. How many of you, your biggest question is, how do I get the pricing right? There's a few of those. That's hard. That's hard. We'll talk about that a lot. How many of you have had to lower your prices in the last year just because things are slow? More than a few?
Only in January.
Only in January? Around the holidays? Cool. Those of you who've done a lot of client interactions, you know that there's some secret sauce. If you ever watch someone, or maybe when you were trained, or maybe you've seen different people in your life over your career who you just felt like did an incredible job dealing with the client early on, there are a few key things that I'm hoping to convey to you guys that will enable you to be that person on your crew, how you can train that person out of your crew. Having the estimate, doing an excellent estimate, is maybe 50% just client interaction, just dealing with them in such a way that they're happy to pay you when you're done, right? Yeah, they may not be happy to accept your bid, but it's all clean, they give you that check, there's a smile on their face. Like, no better feeling than that when the whole job process comes full circle and you know that you've made good money, you're happy with it, the client's giving you their money and they're happy with it because they got more than they expected. And that's the goal, right? Bidding isn't just about making sure you're priced right. It is, it's important. You gotta make money or you're done, like you're not gonna last. So that's important, but the whole process starts with expectations. Managing client expectations, interacting with them in such a way that they will expect to pay you well, doing a good job, obviously, and then at the end of the day, getting paid well for the job you did, and hopefully getting that 5-star review at the end, because that's what keeps the cycle going. So we'll cover quite a few different things here. The process starts with getting good leads. How many of you have more leads than you really can manage effectively? A few. Excellent. I want to know who your marketers are, so stay after, I'll get their number. This isn't a marketing presentation. I don't have a huge amount of time to dive into the marketing aspect of it, but at the very top of the funnel of doing tree work is you have to have calls coming in. So we want to get good leads, so not just calls, but we want the kind of clients that we want to work for, and we want the kind of jobs that your individual crew does really well. You know, some of you guys, depending on what equipment you've got, what special training you got, you're gonna have jobs that you know you can nail and you've got great margins on, and you're gonna have other jobs that, yeah, you'll do it, but you know it's not your specialty. Maybe you're not gonna be able to do the most competitive pricing, whatever that is. But we want the good leads for the jobs you like, and that's gonna help make things work. So we'll talk a little bit about branding, because that's kind of key to getting good leads. Talk about the first contact, what it's like when you first interact with a client, typically over the phone. Talk a little bit about in person, so things that should take place on basically every in-person interaction that you have. And then we'll talk about the closing conversation, getting the pricing right, how you can kind of overcome some objections, and hopefully get the approval on your job right there in person before you even leave, because that's going to be your best turnover. That's your best efficiency in terms of the amount of administration involved with each proposal. If you can get that, that's awesome. And then we'll talk a little bit about what whoever your foreman, whoever's on the job, what they can do to kind of maximize the value of that job, both for your customer and for your business, and a little bit about making a lasting impression, and wrapping things up so that, again, you can get that 5-star review, get more good leads, and keep on going, keep making money. So starting at that top of the funnel, getting good leads starts with good branding, okay? Branding is super hard. It's this mix of art and science. It's tough. Don't try to do it yourself. It's just not worth it. It's one of the best investments you can make in your company, to pay a really good branding person to help you establish a solid professional brand. Because the branding is the first step in generating an expectation of excellence. So people expect to pay high for excellent work. People expect to pay a premium for premium, right? I mean, it seems straightforward to say that, but this is the first step of beginning to manage the expectations of your client so that you can meet or exceed them. And that's part of what it takes to get a 5-star review. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I don't give out 5-star reviews when I have the interaction that is just what I expect, you know? But the whole tipping thing at fast food restaurants, it's like, okay, we talked, you took my order, I got my food. Like, that's what I expect. That's, in my mind, that's baseline. Now, can't always get that, but that's what we hope for. That's not 5-star stuff. But then you get, you know, Chick-fil-A, who goes out of their way with every interaction to be kind, to be generous, to use words that help people feel uplifted. And now all of a sudden you're having an experience that exceeds the expectation of a regular fast food joint. And then you've got Chick-fil-A, you know, one of the biggest franchises in the nation. They run off of this principle of creating an expectation and exceeding it. So branding is about creating an expectation. Now we'll look at some of these pictures up here that I love and some that I do not. These are generalized guidelines. Again, I am not an artist. I'm not a branding expert per se. Those of you who know me through Strider Trees, that's a brand I've built. I've had some help designing the logos, and it's very simple, super minimal, but that has enabled me to do what I do by establishing an expectation for those who end up hiring me, you know, and do things like this. So when people look at tree services, or when I look at tree services promo materials, I see a lot of pictures like this guy and like that guy. And sometimes they're cool pictures like that. I was a professional photographer who came out to this huge crane job, and it was on the house, and we had 2 cranes, and I felt super badass up there hanging from the crane making this huge cut. And it's cool, you guys appreciate it. You know, you see something cool in that. Clients do not care. They don't want to see that. It kind of scares them. What they want to see, you know, of work is maybe this guy. Yeah. But really what they want to see is this. They want to see a beautiful house with beautiful trees, someone else who's got a house more expensive than theirs who is happy with your work. So if on your website you've got a whole bunch of pictures like this and like that of tools that they don't know, and guys not wearing helmets, and you know, I don't care how awesome your work looks to you, the people you're working for don't care. They want to see the end result that they're looking for, which is safe, calm, happy, clean, beautiful. Those are the concerns that actually matter to your client. So that's what you want to have in your outward facing presence. Also logos. You know, I love Save a Tree. I love Save a Tree's logo. I like their style, their branding. Do you think they get a lot of calls for removals? Probably not. Do they get calls for pruning and then have to remove it? Probably all the time. Because you and I know there's only so much you can do for a tree to prune it. But just the fact that in their branding, in this first encounter with their business, they create the expectation that you're not just there to tear down their tree. You're not just there to do, the big, messy, expensive work. That their goal, their hope is to save a tree. That branding just nails that expectation. And then they can go up and have that interaction that actually explains to them, in more detail what is necessary, and they can sell and upsell based on these smaller calls for pruning. This guy over here, on budget tree service. If I'm trying to create the expectation that I'm going to be a premium service, I'm not selling budget. I'm not selling discount. I'm not selling special offer. People associate cheapness with poor quality. There's no way around that. And on the other side of that, people value higher something they paid more for, even if it's the same thing. One of the things we deal with a lot with clients is just ignorance, and there's nothing wrong with that. We're here to educate them. We're here to do a good job. But honestly, many folks, especially in the residential industry, they just don't know the difference between a good job and a bad job. It doesn't really matter to them that much. As long as at the end of the day, it looks like this, right? So advertising, your marketing, your branding, how you present yourself, that is all going to create the expectation that you are the professionals you are trying to be. And hopefully you are. I mean, you guys are all here. You care about doing things right. You care about growth. You're learning. That's what I love about these conferences is you meet just some of the best of the industry because you all took the expense and the time out of your lives to come out and do stuff like this. And so, that is great. That is value. That is an investment in your business. But it's these sort of things that actually portray the effort you're making now to the clients. This branding implies the dedication that you guys show when they can't see, when they don't know. And so by encountering good branding, good images, professional quality stuff, again, it's an expectation. It creates an expectation of you. And that is the first step to nailing the estimate, is create an excellent expectation. Branding is killer. Within the branding, you want to target the people you want to work for, right? If you think back to the last time you had one of those jobs that just was terrible, things kept happening, you knew it wasn't, you got there, you looked at the tree and you realized immediately that day that, we're not gonna make any money off this, let's just get it done. And then the client was a pain in the butt and they wanted all this extra stuff and they didn't realize that you weren't gonna do this and stump grinding wasn't on the bid, but now they want it. And we've all had those. Almost without fail, that was the person who haggled you on the price in the first place, right? That's the person who wanted the cheaper job or, you were the lowest bid, so we're stoked to go or whatever. Those are not really the people we want to work for. Those are not really the people who you're going to build your business off of. We deal with them because we have to. But ideally, we want to attract the people who want the professional. We want to attract the clients who know they're going to pay more and are okay with that so long as the job gets done right. So again, branding. Not only are we generating expectations, we're also scaring away some of the clients who don't want to hire the top-end guy. So by having your branding on right, maybe you don't get as many calls, but the ones that you get, people are going to expect to pay a professional price. They're not looking for the Joe Schmo, Rick's Tree Service, random guy's name in out of nowhere. They're expecting to have a full professional outfit when they hire you straight off. There's one other thing that you should write down about marketing. When it comes to Facebook marketing, Instagram, anytime you're putting out content to attract a business, if you're going to do that, which again, there's some great value in that, it can be some of the best budget marketing you can do. We actually just got off a meeting yesterday from VSG. They're killing it with their Facebook marketing campaigns. It can be some of the best marketing, but again, market what clients want to see, not what seems exciting. Not what you want to target your videos, target whatever you're doing to the people you want to work for. For example, I live in an area that has beetle kill. We have big ponderosa trees, and every year we lose, I don't know, 1 out of 20 or something, especially when it's drought, when we have a drought year. And if my outfit happened to be really good at dealing with these beetle kill trees, so I've got a crane on call, I know we can bust it out, we've got all the equipment. I like doing beetle kill trees because people need it, there's urgency, like that's just whatever it is. For whatever reason, I'm optimized for that. If I want to market to those people, then I put out videos that very concisely give value to homeowners about their beetle kill trees. So, hey, do you guys want to know what it looks like when a beetle first enters your tree while it's still green? Check this out. And we do a little video showing what the beetle sign looks like. We get a video from a drone looking at a top, we call it ghosting, when it loses its color. These are videos that aren't necessarily going to appeal to the tree people. We don't care, we know this stuff, it's super simple. But to your homeowner, they might see that and be like, oh, cool. And then they'll send it to their friend. Hey, I saw this at your house, or whatever. The social media marketing agencies, they highly value content that people voluntarily consume. So social media companies make money off the fact that you're on their platform. So anything that you put on their platform that makes people want to leave, advertising, anything that looks like advertising, they will charge you more to present that to people. But if your content is engaging and interesting, and the people you want to market to are sharing it voluntarily, passing it around, you can get your cost per click down so low you would not believe it. And then you can also reach people in specific localities. So it's a very effective, very powerful tool if you can target the right audience with whatever it is you're putting out. Does that make sense? How many of you had success with Facebook marketing? Like, it's been good. Surprisingly few. Okay, cool. Check it out. It's very location dependent. A lot of the wealthier areas tend to be more saturated, but if you're in a more rural area, a lot of the times there's no one else even doing it. 3 years ago, almost no one was in my area, and now this year there's dozens, but most of them aren't doing it very well. So they're paying for it. They're paying for viewership. When you pay for your ad to be promoted, you're compensating the platform for the lost viewership that your ad is creating for them. So if your ad is really good, then they will pay you for it, essentially, by driving your cost per click down. All right, that's step one. Let's get some good leads. Get lots of them. Let's have those leads expect professional service. Moving on to step two, first contact. They click your ad, or they find your phone number and they give you a call. Again, know your audience. Basically, everyone wants a phone call, or everyone is going to initiate a phone call. If they haven't, a lot of times either they're not interested, or they're just kind of shopping around. They'll see who respond, maybe they'll send a text. You're starting to get a little bit more of the schedule online thing in some areas. Some of the millennials are more inclined to fill out a form to get some info or to get someone to come out. But it's absolutely critical that you answer your phone straight off. If you can answer your phone and get out to the job within 24 hours, your closure rate will be sky high. That is one of the number of ways you can maximize your closing rate, is just get there now, as soon as you can. Because most of the time, when they're calling you, they have an urgent problem. Something is bothering them, and it's bothering them enough that they're willing to contact someone who they know is going to be expensive, who they expect is probably going to be a little gruff and hard to talk to, and they're so anxious about their problem that they're willing to reach out and do something uncomfortable. And so if you respond immediately, recognize their urgency, identify it over the phone, and get out there quickly, then they feel so much more understood. You're already beginning to reduce their stress level. You're already beginning to solve their problem like that. And that is going to transition them to be much more open to scheduling with you right there on the spot, because they immediately sense, oh, you care. You care, this matters to you just like it matters to me. So answer the phone, be there. I'm climbing trees all day, so I'll answer it in my Cardo, and I'll be having a conversation with someone and be like, hey, I'm sorry, I'm right up in a tree right now. Can I shoot you a text message, or will you text me your address? I'll try and get out there after the job. Without fail, those people call back. They're, oh yeah, no worries. And I'll be out there, and they're stoked, and I get very consistently close those jobs. Gen Z text a little bit. So if you get younger people, once you've made the initial phone contact, you can text back and forth. Texting is great for details. Texting is great for sometimes for negotiating, for asking very specific questions. Texting can be good for actually cutting out bad jobs you don't want. A lot of times I'll use texting if in my phone process, if I get a sense that what they want actually isn't going to be good or what they want is not really necessary, I'll often have them, hey, text me some pictures and I'll take a look at those. That limb is fine, it's concerning, but it might just shoot me a picture, and if I can take the headache off your mind, and then I'll do that. If not, then I'll have a better idea what we're up against. They're almost always happy to do that. And so that can be a good way to, again, build some trust and to show that you care about what they care about. So if monitoring expectations or if managing expectations is half of good client interactions, the other half of it is building trust. So your branding starts by building trust. They expect professionalism. They figure you're going to do the job, that you know how to do the job. The phone interaction is your first chance to build trust with them in person. By answering quickly, by recognizing their need, you're building trust. By setting a date in short term that you can actually meet, that you can be there for, you're creating a circumstance where you made a promise and then you get to meet that. And that is key in building trust. There's a value anytime you can make a promise and then deliver on that promise. Again, you're building trust. So manage their expectations, start building trust as soon as you can. A lot of times, like I said, on the phone while I'm climbing, I'll answer, tell them I'll call them back. Now we talk again. So now we've had one instance of building trust. Like, okay, cool, shoot me some pictures. We have another instance of building trust. I give them some feedback on their pictures. And then, well, I'll be out there tomorrow. Another chance to build trust. So we've had 3 times before I've even seen them. It cost me very little effort, cost me very little time, but I've had 3 opportunities to build their trust already. You know.
Was that your actual text exchange with a little Arco there?
Oh, no. Yeah, it's just. Now I wonder whose that is.
Good one.
Online marketing should generate calls. If you're not actually getting calls from your online marketing, it's probably not working that well. Unless you have like an online form and you can see that you're getting a lot of forms, you really want to optimize for calls. Most every platform will let you do that. They'll let you kind of focus on one thing or the other. So shoot for getting calls. Love it. Okay, talk a little about phone screening. We want those good leads, right? When we're dealing with, let's see, I'm just gonna bump all these down. When we answer the phone, obviously be polite, be professional, give them your name or your business. And one of the first questions I like to ask is, okay, so what do you hope to accomplish? They'll call me, I'll be like, you know, whatever. They'll ask me if I'm who they think I am. I'm like, oh yeah, how can I help you? What's going on? And then we'll talk. They'll express some particular concern about a tree, right? Now, their concern might be, sometimes they'll start by saying, here's what I want done. So they have some clear idea of what they want done. They want something removed. You know, this tree over my house is worrying me. I've got insurance. They're going to drop me. I want to deal with that. And so they'll jump right into the work they're hoping to pay for or expecting to pay for. A lot of times, what they want done isn't actually what's best for them. You know, as arborists, our job is to help educate, help explain, and give them the value that we can provide. So I like the question, hey, what are you hoping to accomplish? What are you really concerned about here? Is insurance, have they said they're going to drop you? Did they send you a letter with pictures of what they want? Or and a lot of times when I start asking these more prying questions, I'll find out, no, their neighbor got dropped. Their neighbor has a different insurance company. They're just concerned about being dropped themselves. And so it changes the conversation from, yeah, you know, I'm happy to come out and give you a bid, to let's get to the bottom of what's really bothering you. Because if you can, again, build trust by demonstrating understanding, by building rapport, then that trust you can build will, again, make them much more eager to activate that purchasing decision. If they have the confidence that you understood what their actual concern is and that you can deal with it, they're going to be so much more primed and ready to just say, okay, yeah, you can deal with it. It's an arduous process from their end to deal with people who don't do that. It feels very risky to sign for a huge, payment for this thing when they're not totally sure that business understood what it was that they actually wanted. So this is the part of, again, building trust, establishing expectations, and then you can identify their urgency. Like you can really establish, okay, how much does this matter to them? Are they ready to make this decision right now? Is this something that, I want to get done down the road? Is this something that they just want you to come out and look at something because it's bothering them a little bit? And this is where that conversation of, do you give free estimates? And I see online all the time. How many of you, yes, always give free estimates? A decent percentage. How many, you'll go out, but you're going to charge them for your time? Some of you, it can go both ways. Here's how I like to divide that one up, because anytime I'm out on someone's property, that's a good thing. If I can talk to someone face to face, I know that I personally interact well with people, and oftentimes, even if I talk them out of the work they called me there to do, I'll find some other work that makes sense for us to do. and more often than not, that happens. And even if I do talk them out of work completely, we're done. They are super relieved because they're like, I don't have to pay for anything. You totally covered that. You're right. We don't need it. And you can take a burden off of them. You can solve their problem. It costs you a little bit of time, but now you've got a customer for life because they know that it's not just your interest you're looking out for, that you actually are looking out for them because you didn't just try to sell them something they didn't need. Do you have a question?
Those customers are also often an easy 5-star review.
Yep. Yeah. You ever get 5-star reviews from a customer you didn't have to work for?
They're happy. Ask them for a review.
Absolutely. Anytime you interact, you can ask for a review, and that would be totally makes sense to do. The last thing you want to do, let's see, where did that go? Is schedule. You should schedule right there on the phone. Find a time you can be there. Like I said, 24 hours, the sooner the better. You can even, for folks who you can tell aren't urgent, you can tell they aren't shopping around, if you get the sense that this probably isn't going to be a customer, schedule them out a little bit. It's not your loss to them. There's no loss to you. It's less to worry about right now. They may end up looking with someone else. Don't be afraid to let someone go if it's obvious that they're going to waste your time. And the more you interact on the phone, the more you'll kind of get the hang of that. But when it comes down to it, that time, your time matters. All right, let's see here. I'm going to reiterate one more time. You have to get to the bottom of the emotional reason that they're doing the work. People's spending decisions, far more often than not, are based on an emotion. I've done big, complicated jobs with high-dollar stuff that I knew weren't necessary, but I also knew the client was going to continue to be worried no matter how much I told them it was safe, right? And they've given me the job anyway. And it's been awesome. It's been great. They're happy. They're relieved. That is typically your easiest customer to please because they're so stressed about the whole process. They're so stressed about every part of it, what's happening, that once it's down and done and it's clean and beautiful, they are thrilled. So sometimes that'll go both ways, but the key is to get down to the emotional problem. At the same time, you need to talk to whoever it is who has the emotional problem. So sometimes the husband will call, but it's the wife who's worried, vice versa. Try to get the person on the phone who's really concerned, figure out what it is. Or ask whoever you're talking to, is this something you're really worried about? Was it your wife? What's going on? And because it matters when you go to the estimate. You want to have that person there talking to you while you're doing the estimate. It's absolutely critical. I'll mention that again here. Last thing when it comes to the phone conversations, know your specialty. Know what your crew does really well because, for example, for me, I'm a contract climber. I don't keep a lot of my own equipment. I don't keep a staff. I mostly work for other companies. I still get a lot of calls from my own clients from when I had a service. I know what I can do really well. I can underprice certain processes, no cleanup, certain types of no cleanup jobs, certain types of rigging stuff better than anyone else because I'm really, really efficient at rigging, complicated, tricky stuff. and I can bring my one ground guy out and we can land stuff and I can nail those. So know what your specialty is, because that is your competitive advantage. A lot of times on the phone, I will tell people, if I get the sense, or I ask them, so if you had anyone else out to look at this, if I get the sense that they're shopping around, I will tell them on the phone, hey, I'm not going to be able to give you the best price for this. I'm kind of a specialist. This is what I do really well. It's complicated things, and I charge more for that. If you want me to come out, I'm happy to, but just know I don't shoot for the low bid. Like it's gonna be more expensive. I do that on jobs where it's not my specialty. When I know I'm gonna have to grab one of my contractors and operate the whole job with their crew and equipment and yada yada. But then at the same time, on the flip side, I'll ask them, hey, are you looking to kind of get this done as cheaply as possible? Like, is this branch worried you? Do you want to try to tackle the cleanup yourself? Is that an option, or are you really hoping to have it all done? Because I can actually give you a great price on a no cleanup operation because it's really simple for me and it's what I do well. And then I can get a sense for what they're actually looking for and provide better value, and oftentimes give them a really good price without it being cheap and without it being great margins for me. So you got to know what your crews do as you're having these conversations to begin creating the expectation of what you do well, and then they'll also feel like, oh, this guy's a specialist in exactly what I need. Awesome. And if you're a specialist at everything, then great. You can still sell that the same way. So the phone screening is your chance to kind of eliminate, push away the jobs you don't want without even having to go to those places. And it's also your chance to kind of maximize your chance of nailing those jobs that you really do want and that you know your company does well. Don't work for bad clients. If you find out that the client doesn't, if they're, say they've got a tree that they want you to cut right at the property line, and they only want you to cut at the property line because they hate their neighbor and their neighbor doesn't want to pay for it, and oh man, often those clients are not worth the money. Like, they're just not worth the headache. It's not worth the hassle. Like, yes, you can do it. Yes, you can keep it busy, but a bad client can be far more expensive than a good payday. A bad review is very costly long term. It doesn't cost you once. It can go down to one bad job. The other thing is, if you know that what they want done, you're not going to leave something beautiful at the end. Those are jobs to price higher. Those are jobs to give them the no thank you price. Those are jobs where you kind of want to disincentivize them from moving forward with your company, because ideally you want to continue to maintain your reputation. You want to leave something beautiful. You know at the end of the day, for everyone's satisfaction, it's better if they're stoked to pay you, and a lot of those jobs just don't pan out that way. So part of nailing your estimate is knowing when to say no thank you. Now, most any time, there's a price where it's worth it. So we'll get into that more with pricing, but when it comes to pricing, I always tell people, give a price where you're stoked to do the job plus a little bit extra. Because even if you're stoked to do the job at that price, if you've got that little extra buffer, then you can always do one more thing for the client without having to charge them, and then they feel like they got a deal. They feel super stoked. It's that we generated the expectation early on with the branding, we've built trust, we've executed the job, and then we've exceeded the expectations, and that's where you'll get the 5-star review. So if from the very beginning you're building in that buffer of being able to happily exceed their expectations without charging them more, that's going to get you those 5-star reviews time after time. All right. In-person estimate. All right, so first impressions really matter. Hopefully you've made a few first impressions on the phone already. Vehicle branding can be significant. I think it's more effective as a marketing tool in that people will just see your trucks, right? People will call because they'll write down the number. It's just getting your name out more. But if you show up in a beat up old pickup that's peeling paint everywhere and at the estimate, you're more expensive, right? Well, it's going to create an expectation. So they're going to expect cheaper. They're going to expect, doesn't always play out this way. It's kind of hit or miss, because at the same time, if you show up in a whole, brand spanking new F-250 that's lifted with big tires and yada yada, they think, oh, this guy charges a lot. And there's a balance there. So something to be aware of. What you look like, including your vehicle, is a representation of you and your company. So drive the vehicle that creates the expectation that you want your client to have, and that's going to be a little bit different for each of you. All right. We already talked about some of these. More often than not, you want to offer what's best for them. At least offer it. So there's some subtleties to wording in your estimates that make a big difference here. When I want to, so for example, the upsell. The upsell is a tricky one. Someone says they want this branch removed because they're afraid of it falling on the house. The whole tree leans towards their house. Take the branch off, cool. If the tree falls, it's going on their house. That's the upsell I see all the time. And in my conversation with the client, we'll be talking about it. I'll say, okay, I see this big branch. It looks pretty scary. It's really lateral. Your intuition about its potential to fall is very real. We could totally remove that for you. It would cost, roughly this price. But would you be opposed to looking at removing the whole tree? The price difference isn't all that significant. We have to bring the same crew, the same equipment out. But actually removing the tree will remove the danger, whereas removing the branch won't. You still have all that canopy above the roof line. If you get a strong wind, that could be more significant than any branch weight we're going to remove. So here I offer the upsell. I've shown them, hey, this is going to be better for you in the long run. If they really want to preserve the tree, that's their chance to say it. And then we say, okay, let's look at a full tip reduction. Like, let's really look at how we can do this. Maybe we can guy it back. If you're all about saving this tree, let's make a plan for that. But my suggestion initially maximizes my profit for the company because we're going to show up with our costs are the same, for me as a business owner to get everyone out there. But now we're going to make a little bit more money, even if it's only a couple $100 more. Oftentimes the removal is easier too. You don't have to rig through branches, or maybe it's less complicated. Maybe you can pull the whole thing over backward. A lot of times it's just not that different for us, but it makes a huge difference for them. And they may be only asking for that branch in the first place because they assume the full removal is so much more expensive. And we know it's just not always. So don't be afraid to offer that upsell if you genuinely think that's what's best for them. But at the same time, reassure them, hey, look, I'm happy to do whatever level of care you want to provide here. Here's just my suggestion, as an arborist. Those sorts of conversations, again, they trust, they optimize for your company. They don't feel like a scummy upsell. Like those sorts of conversations have almost always gone well for me. And they give the client the opportunity to actually share what matters to them. I feel like it's 50-50 when I go out, whether or not the client really cares about their trees or just really cares about getting whatever hazards removed and you got to know. Because the prescription there is so different. And that's what you guys can do as the estimator. So get to the bottom of what matters to them and what doesn't. Another thing I like to do in terms of when you think about optimizing for what your crew does well, when you're looking at cleanup, right? Cleanup can be a huge part of the job. And sometimes you've got the access, your equipment will rock it, you don't have bad slopes, whatever. You can nail the cleanup, but they're offering a no cleanup job, or like they want it inexpensively. That's where you might try to sell the upsell on the cleanup, knowing that it doesn't cost you much more and you can leave a really nice job. The beautiful thing about doing a cleanup job is it's beautiful at the end and they're happy with it. At the end of the day, they're not looking at this catastrophe of limbs, dreading the work they're going to have to do to deal with that. And you could have dealt with it so easy, right? Those are good upsells. Even if they don't want to even decide against it, just knowing that, hey, in my back pocket, I can upsell a few $100 and we can be out here in 20 minutes with our blowers, clean the whole driveway, get all the needles off, and just do this fantastic job. On the flip side of that, most of you guys probably use mats, right, over grass turf. I know a lot of the south, you guys have a lot more, you get grass than we do in California, at least in my area. I almost never do, because one of my lines I always use is, we ain't dropping pillows, we're gonna do some damage here. And if I can create the expectation that damage will happen, then they expect it. Like if I tell them, oh yeah, you've got this great dogwood under this maple, and it's beautiful, I know you wanna preserve it, but there's just you can see every branch has to down right here, and we can do our best to save it, but there's a really good chance we knock some limbs off this thing. If you can tell them that ahead of time, create the expectation that you're going to do more damage than you can do, when you're done, and things aren't as damaged as they expected. They expected this catastrophe. You warned them for it, but when you're done, it's all beautiful and it's all patched up. Again, you've done the same job. It hasn't cost you any more, but they are thrilled. You've exceeded the expectation that you set. Does that make sense? So when you're talking, you want to look for these opportunities where you can create an expectation that you know you can exceed. That will get you those 5-star reviews. Last thing is, try to get it scheduled before you leave. I know this is tough. One of the things I like to do is I'll after walking around, making sure we've detailed everything out, I'll be taking notes or whatever on my phone. And if it's pretty straightforward, I'll do it right there without walking away. If it's more complicated, I'll say, hey, I need to go sit in the truck for a minute to run the numbers on this. Well, let me see what I can do. I'll just knock in just a minute and I'll give you a price. And so go back and I'll figure out my numbers. I'll take 10 minutes and I'll come back, I'll knock and we'll talk and we'll look it over. All right, so here's what we talked about. And I'll run down the line items, reiterating what they were concerned about. Hey, you were concerned about this limb, so we're gonna take that one out. We decided to take the whole tree. Doesn't cost any more. That was the price I told you. We talked about, some extra yard coverage because you really don't have a landscaper, so you really want to protect your grass. I understand that. I don't want to deal with grass. We'll bring extra mats, but I have to charge a little more for that. Here's that line item. And so you reiterate everything you talked about on your walk around, and they know exactly what they're getting. Nice, detailed, specific estimate. And then you're like, okay, here's what it's going to cost. So this is the when can we get you scheduled? That's the line. When can we get you scheduled? It's called assuming the close. You're assuming they're going to say yes, and they're immediately thinking, okay, wow, I can get this done. You want to supercharge that one more time and say, when can I get you scheduled? I've got a spot next week on Thursday, or would the week after on Tuesday be better? Now, all they have to do is say yes. All they have to think about is, does that day work? I don't see why not. And they're already leaning towards, you've already built the trust. Everything along the way says that you can deliver on what you're promising them. What you're promising is very clear, and then they can make that decision. Doesn't always work, but that's a great way to go. If it doesn't work, more often than not, what happens is you'll see the resistance right off. It'll be really obvious. You see it in their face, either the sticker shock or the, I gotta go talk to the wife, or okay, well, let me think about this, whatever. You got some options here. The easiest thing to say is, no worries, hope it goes well for you, we'll talk to you later. Go, right? That's the easiest thing. That's not the worst way to deal with it. That guarantees your professionalism, it saves you some time, it gives them some space. Sometimes that's great. The closing rate on that method's not awesome. If you leave without getting that thing signed, I don't know. If you're lucky, you've got a 30% chance maybe of that one coming through, even if you do follow up, whatever. More often than not, it's not going to get you there. You could also say, follow up with, all right, is there anything here that we missed? Is there something about this that you feel like is not going to accomplish what you're looking for? Were you really just trying to get a lower price? Go ahead.
I was just mentioning to you here, but it sounds like if you work hard at vetting people at the beginning, you can feel more liberty to spend time with, and not pressure, but like you're saying, spend time with, really understand them.
When you've got a good lead, it's worth the time on the job.
I'm afraid to that too hard and investigate, but at some point that makes sense.
If you've got the leads coming in, by all means, narrow it down. Go to the jobs that you know are good, and take the time. I plan for an hour on every estimate. Doesn't always take me that long, but I plan for that. Actually, that reminds me, there's something we didn't mention. The free estimate versus charged. I will always give a free estimate if they know what they want. If on the phone they sound like they know what they want, hey, I'll be happy to come out and give you a price for that. Whatever, no charge. I'll be there soon. If it sounds like they really don't know what they want, or they are just trying to understand their trees, a lot of times it's a new property owner, they're trying to figure out what they want to do best, that's where I'll say, sounds like you're not totally sure what you want done, you more want to know about your trees, you want to understand this, and you want to do what's best. I'd be happy to come out and give you an arborist consultation. I'll send out my ISA guy, and he'll spend an hour with you. It costs $200. Either you'll find out immediately, oh, they're really not that interested, or they'll happily pay a couple $100 to know what they need to do. And then once that guy's out there, he can say, hey, if you want to schedule this job, this is after you get in the price. If you schedule this job right now, I can take our arborist fee out of it. We just fold that into the price. It's no big deal. And you can say that on the phone too. You can be like, yeah, I'll send the arborist out for a couple $100. It's $200. If you end up doing work with us, we'll just take that out of our total. So if they book you, then it doesn't cost them any extra, but it gives you a chance to redeem some of your time, right? And then again, it vets out those folks you don't want to spend an hour talking to for nothing. All right. It's important to know when you write up a bid for an estimate, never charge for your time. I understand that you need to understand that you guys as business owners, when you're figuring out what it's going to cost, you have to consider time, like the time to do each line item. It's essential. But you don't want the client to know, because if you charge for your time, if time is on the estimate, if it's hours, if it's days, whatever it is, if you're charging by your time, it's a lose-lose situation. You cannot exceed an expectation when expectation is an amount of time, right? Because if you nail the time, it's perfect. If you're under, they feel cheated because you finished early. If you're over, they're like, they're gonna get charged more because they took more time, and they don't know if that's your inefficiency or if that's the job or what. Don't charge by the time, give them line items. On top of that, if you line item things out, don't line item anything you wouldn't be willing to do by itself. Does that make sense? So if you've got a whole bunch of little ornamental prunes, lump them all together into a package that you would be happy to send your guy out to do if that's the only line item they chose. Does that make sense? Okay, question, go for it.
How do you fight the day rate with HOAs and contractors?
Different story there.
They love trying to get a day rate. We don't want to try and beat things out.
Yeah.
In our market.
HOAs are a whole different beast when it comes to estimating, because often too you're interacting with a manager who doesn't even have any stake in it. They just want to get the lowest guy who's probably going to do a good job. Like, it's a whole different beast. So different conversation. I'm really focused on residential. Like, this is when you're talking to the homeowner, the person who's going to pay you, the person whose stake is with you on that job. It's a great question though. So when you submit a written estimate, it's not about the time. Line items, make sure your line items, if you're going to divide it up, make sure any one of those they pick, they're happy with, or you specify on the thing, this price only available if all done together. And it'll save you a lot of hard conversations. Such a big difference there.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Go back to the sticker shock scenario. When they sticker shock,
Yep.
you have to try to handle that before you leave.
Totally. Okay. This is higher than you expected. I've got some ways I could bring the price down for you. If there's, I've got some ways I could potentially bring the price down for you. Negotiate the scope, negotiate the price. So again, this goes back to knowing what your crew does well. For me, hey, like, this is the price for the whole thing, but if we don't broadcast, or if we can broadcast the chips, leave them in a pile in your yard, you can give them away. People next door will happily come collect your chips or come collect the logs. If we don't haul the logs away, I can save you $600. Like, that's a huge hassle for me, and things like that. So you can negotiate the scope, but you really shouldn't be negotiating your price. Does that make sense? If you're negotiating your price, they will feel like you're cheaper. Most private individuals will not bother to try to negotiate with a company they expect as a professional. A service is what a service costs. So if you negotiate yourself that, hey, we can do this, we can do that. If we take this off, no big deal. If we, at the same time, I'll often, if I know I'm going to be out there for 4 hours or 5 hours and I need the whole crew chipper, I will often upsell a big value item that I knew they would probably like, and make it a full day rate, essentially. Like, I know what a good day rate is for me and my company. I'll say, hey, I know that seems like a lot for what you've got to do here, but given that our whole crew is out here, all the same equipment, we could actually do this whole other tree that you mentioned that you didn't think you'd be priced, and it'd only be like $400 more. And you could take a thing where they're worried about the cost to actually spending more, and you're making more money, and you're upselling, and they feel better about it because the value is there. And that's about, that's how you fill your day instead of having to like go from job to job and tie those things together. In California, where we're at, just so many damn trees, that sort of thing works pretty well often. There's another question.
In my area, we have a lot of, especially older people that want like absolutely horrible things done to their trees. And when you tell them not to do it, they like get angry at you. You know, it's like, who's this arborist guy think he is?
Yeah.
He's doing my trees.
Yep.
You know, how do you handle that?
Okay, so there's expectations. The old person, the trick here to those guys is getting to the bottom of why they want what they want. So they want to top this tree for their view. Okay. Next year it's going to be the same thing. And you could show them pictures. Hey, here's what this tree looks like topped after 1 year. So if you want me to do this, I could totally do that. It's going to look rough. It's going to cause damage. It's going to be something you'll have to maintain every couple of years. How about we just take it out? It's not, the price difference isn't that much. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. So you can often accommodate what they really want if you can understand why they want it and just alter the scope a little bit. That's kind of the best you can do. But I've rarely had that fail. Like I've very rarely had someone disregard my professional advice because of all the ways I built expectation up until that point. I've gone on to clients, in fact, because I subcontract, I go on these other jobs where the contractor I'm working for got a whole bunch of really detailed instructions from the client about all the things they wanted done on their big property. It was like a 3-day job. I showed up, we did the first day, we went around, I got the client with me, and I pointed out some other things that weren't on the list. I was like, hey, did you know about this? This is actually kind of a problem. Maybe you didn't notice, and I'll describe it to them in detail using sophisticated language, and then I'll be like, hey, but this other thing that is on the list, I really don't think it's that critical. Could we swap this out? Would that be okay for you? It wouldn't charge you anymore, but that'll be more impactful for what you want if we're trying to create fire safety, for example. 20 minutes of talking like that, the client went from over-managing, hyper-managing, to saying, oh yeah, totally, just do what you want. And just left us alone for the rest of the 2 days. We did way more work, way better things, and he was so thrilled at the end. But it was a matter of him not having confidence because the guy who did the bid was my younger cousin who doesn't know how to speak the language, doesn't know how to interact. He hadn't built the expectation of professionalism that I very quickly established by having that conversation. So again, if you can create that expectation, you can make that happen, you can really do wonders in terms of accommodating what people actually want, what they're actually concerned about, and then addressing it in a way that we know is appropriate, whether or not that's what they initially thought or initially wanted. All right. Don't be afraid to pass on a job. There's lots of ways to do it. I like the no thank you price. I also have an FU price. I hate it when that gets called. But at least you make good money on it, right? Go ahead. Yeah, so your question is, how do you deal with sort of more complicated scenarios where you're dealing with tree ordinance and trying to get the right permitting and for various aspects of a job? How do I deal with the conflict between what seems to be required that we wouldn't want to do? Is that what you're asking? Like, That's a good question, and I don't have time to address it. I got a couple more slides I want to get to. We're almost out of time. So stay afterward. We can talk about that. One of the things that I wanted to make sure to get to is coming up, and it'll be more valuable, I think. But stay after, and we can talk. Okay, the 18. Overkill is underrated, my friends. If you planned to exceed whatever it is you told them you're going to do. And sometimes that means telling them you're going to do something worse than you know you can do it. That's the easiest way to exceed expectations. Any hack who knows nothing about arboriculture can exceed expectations if what they tell the client is worse than what they can actually accomplish. It's hard to do that. It hurts your pride a little bit, right? But If you know you're gonna make a mess, tell them it's gonna be a big mess. Tell them you'll do your best. But when you're done, if it's better, they're stoked. All right. Get the price right. We want to talk about this for a little bit. Getting the price right involves a few things. Knowing your costs. You need to know what your costs are per hour, ideally. You need to know your equipment costs, your manpower, whatever. You can pretty much, if you really get down into your books, you can figure that out very precisely. It's important. Know what you do best. We talked about that a lot. Know where you can cut corners. Know where you can succeed as a company. Also, be willing to lose the bid. Don't forget to price in risk. So this little thing is a screenshot from a tool I'm building. It's for doing estimates. Trying to train someone to do estimates is really challenging, but this tool basically says, if you know what your hourly costs are for your normal crew, and you know what the extras are, if you need to add an extra man or add some extra equipment, you put those in, and then all you gotta do is throw your line items down and how many hours you think each line item is going to take, and then you come down to these sliders. These sliders are all critical and they're somewhat independent. The difficulty and technicality, okay, you're gonna have to pull out a contract climber who really knows this stuff. Are you doing some fancy span rigging, whatever? How hard is it to do this? Because that generally translates to extra time, but at the very least, extra complexity, extra knowledge. You should charge more for more technical, difficult things, right? If that's high enough, you'll be able to afford a crane, right? Because that simplifies a difficult technical problem. Next one's personal injury risk. If I have to climb a dead tree and rig from it, and that's the only way to solve it, I am at much more personal risk. I need to price that in. Because I can only do that so many times before something bad happens, right? Steep slopes, rocks, whatever, we need to factor that in because someone could roll an ankle, we might lose a guy, we might roll the tipper. Things happen when the personal injury risk changes. Last one is property risk. Am I working over a multi-million-dollar mansion, or am I working out in the field in the middle of nowhere, Hicksville, right? If I've got a lot of property at risk, I need to price that in. Even if the job is simple, even if I know I can do it, I can rig this safely 10 times out of 10, if I'm taking on more liability property-wise, I have to price that in. That is what they pay us for. That's why we make good money. And frankly, everyone is undercharging. If you look at other industries and what they charge for what they do and the risks that they take, every one of you is undercharging. So these are critical things to price in. If you want access to this tool, it's a link. It's not even listed on Google yet. I'm building it with a CRM company. But I can give you the link. I want more feedback on it. I want it to be really helpful for people. The goal is to make it easier to get solid estimates where you're not going to lose money. And it's just easier to train because now the person doesn't have to know how everything's going to be done. They just have a good sense of how long it's going to take. And if they overestimate, great, it's more expensive. Speaking of more expensive, this is the slide. This is the money slide. So take a picture, right? I'm always telling people charge more. Okay, so this is based on a theoretical. Write this down, think about it. I'm giving you a theoretical idea. All right, so your average day, $2,000. $2,000 job, you've got a 50% profit margin. You know it is going to cost you $1,000 to make $2,000. All right, this is your baseline. $2,000 job, $1,000 profit. If I increase my cost 10%, so I'm charging $2,200, and I lose 1 out of 10 clients. So now instead of working 10 days, I've only worked 9 days. But I made $2,200 each day. My gross profit is higher. It's like 11.5. I don't know where that number went, but it's higher. Same thing, I go up 20% over gross. I'm charging $2,400, and I'm only working 8 days. I lost 20% of my clients because I charged more. I'm still making more money over the course of the same 10 days. I'm making more money and I've got 2 more open days that I could fill. That's 2 more days my equipment's not running. That's 2 less days that I'm burning through those expenses. So your opportunities get bigger and your profit margins. 30%, same thing. I'm still making more money, but now I've only worked 7 days. And I've made more money than 10 days at baseline. 50% growth. So I lost, instead of working for 10 days for 10 people, I did 10 estimates still, or 15 estimates, and I've got 10 of them. I only closed 5 of them. I lost half of them, but I increased my prices by 50%. This is a $3,000 job for 5 days. Now I'm back at baseline. Except I've only worked 5 days. When you run the math like that, it very clearly shows that overpricing is a much, much, much safer bet than trying to, for your company, for your longevity, for your equipment. It's less risk, less jobs you do is less risk exposure. Less jobs you do is less wear and tear on your equipment. Even if you have to take more days off, you can still pay the same salary. You can pay your guys for the same 10 days. Well, not quite, because I'm saying you've only got 10 days worth of expenses, but so it doesn't quite work out that nicely. But the idea is the same. If you can work less days and charge more, it takes you got a 50% margin before you're even back to baseline, if that makes sense.
But that's with the same client now.
That's saying so on all of these, you got 10 leads, right?
Linearly elastic demand.
Yeah, it's kind of complicated, but you've got variables that are connected. So it's saying you went to 10 jobs, you went to 10 bids essentially, and on this one you got all of them, and then on this one you lost 1, you lost 2, you lost 3, you lost 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, from the same 10 leads.
But if you can increase the amount of calls that you're getting, like,
Yeah.
that side's where it's at.
Oh, Amy, well, all of a sudden you've got 5 more days, right?